This video is for the 4-1 Work Together and On Your Own. I am currently looking at page 97 in the textbook, and I am on page 59 in the workbook. So the instructions in your textbook, we need to prepare a chart of accounts and open an account. Isabel Seville owns a service business called Seville Company, which uses these accounts. And there's a whole bunch of accounts listed there. So our first step, we need to prepare a chart of accounts, arrange expense accounts in alphabetical order, use 3-digit account numbers, and number the accounts within a division by tens. So that's our first step up here where it says 1. We're going to be creating our chart of accounts. So how we will start this off is we need to write the company name. And underneath your company name, we will write chart of accounts, since that is what we are creating. Next, we are going to separate these accounts into 2 different groups. We're going to have our balance sheet accounts. Our balance sheet accounts will be our assets, liabilities, and owner's equity. And then we will have our income statement accounts on the right. And our income statement accounts will be our income, our revenue, and then also our expenses. And we do want to write that out, however, I ran out of room. I'll zoom in a little bit more here. So, first we'll start on the left. Very first, we're going to, the purpose of our balance sheet is to prove that our accounting equation is still in balance, which our accounting equation is assets equals liabilities plus owner's equity. So the first thing we will start with is assets, and assets will be listed with 100 as their main number. So we will start with 100 assets. And you would start numbering with our accounts. We would go 110, 120, 130, and so on. We don't want to start with 100 just in case we would have something before the first one. Highly unlikely since the first one is cash, but just in case. So if we look at all of the accounts that are listed, we need to find the one that are assets. So going from the front, those prepaid or payables, that's not it. Prepaid insurance is one. We also have cash and supplies. And then our accounts receivable. Those ones are all going to be our assets. And how we list our assets is we start with the first one as cash, which is 110. So we'll write the number 110, and we'll go cash. And we want to list these from cash, and we want to have the easiest ones that are to turn into cash listed next. So it does go in a certain order. So the next one will be our accounts receivable. And I'm going to abbreviate. We really don't want to abbreviate, but I don't have a whole lot of room. So we have 2 different ones here. We have L North and we have Greg Varez. And I'm just going to list these in alphabetical order. So I'll put L North first. And then 130 will be my other accounts receivable. After that, we have 2 more different assets. We have supplies and prepaid insurance. We will list supplies next because we could quickly turn that into money if we were to sell it. And our last one will be prepaid insurance. If we were to cancel our insurance, we would get some money back. But we just put in the order that they are easily turned into cash, or how quickly they can get turned into cash. So it's cash, accounts receivable, supplies, prepaid insurance. You may see petty cash sometimes, which is an account we do not use yet, but petty cash goes right after your cash account. Okay, so our balance sheet, we have assets equals liabilities. So underneath that, we will put 200 in parentheses, and this will be our liabilities. And these are our payable accounts, and we currently have 2 accounts payable. We have Anoka Supplies and we have Supply Mart. I'm just going to put those in alphabetical order. So I'm going to start with 210. You never want to start with like 200. You would want to start with 210 with the tens to make room for new accounts. So this is accounts payable. And I will put Anoka Supplies, or however you say that. And then 220 would be accounts payable for Supply Mart. And then our last one will be for our owner's equity, which will be 300 in parentheses. I apologize. I know that my hand is in the way a lot. There's just a lot to write for this one. We have two accounts that are part of owner's equity. We have our capital and our drawing. You will always want to list your capital first and your drawing second. And that completes the balance sheet accounts, 100, 200, and 300. We will then move on to our income statement accounts, and this will start off with our revenue, which will then go to 400. And we will put revenue. So looking at all the accounts that are given to us in the book here, we can find sales, and that is our only type of revenue. So we will put 410, and we will put sales. Could you ever have more than one type of sales? Yes, and I do an advanced accounting class where we have departmentalized accounts. However, you will typically just see one sales in this class. So after that, we have revenue. Our last classification of accounts for income statement and that also need to get listed on our chart of accounts are expenses. And expenses need to be listed alphabetical. So if we look in our textbook, we have miscellaneous expense, insurance expense, supplies expense, automobile expense, and rent expense. So there are 5 different expenses. So maybe I'll just go write my numbers down first. And what we need to do is list these in alphabetical order. Some of them are easier than others. So automobile will go first because A is the first letter of the alphabet. And yes, you need to write expense after every single one of these. After that, we will do insurance expense. Then miscellaneous expense. Then we will have rent and then supplies. Oops. And that is our chart of accounts, which is completed now with our 3 different parts. Make sure when you do these, if you put like spaces between them, if you leave blank lines, which I personally like to do, but I can't do it here because it would take up too much room. But you can make it work as well if you did some blank lines, however you can make it come out. So that was our first step of the work together. The second step of our work together, it says 2 new accounts, postage expense and utilities expense, are to be added to the chart of accounts prepared in part 1. Assign account numbers to the 2 new accounts. So we have postage expense and utilities expense. So down here in part 2, I am going to first of all give it a heading, and I'm going to call it new accounts. And I'm just going to label account number and then also account title. Now these here are both expenses, so we just need to make sure we put them in alphabetically. So the first one we have is postage expense, which LMNOP, so that would go between miscellaneous expense and rent expense. So we need to assign it a number between 530 and 540. So the number we will assign to postage expense will be 535. That still leaves room for any new accounts that we may have. Eventually, if we added too many new accounts, we may just renumber all of them, and we could even go to a 4-number system instead of a 3-number system as well. You will see that later in the book, I think after chapter 9 or 10, I can't remember what chapter that starts. And then our next one is utilities expense. Utilities starts after S. So we're going to assign that the next number, which would be 560. There's no reason to give that 555 because there's no numbers we're putting it in between. And our last step we need to do in 3 says using the account form in the working papers, open cash. This will be the easiest thing we get to do. So cash is number 110. So if we go down here, this is an example of what our general ledger will look like when we post. We need to write the account name next to account, which is cash. And then we need to give it the account number 110. And that's that. So Work Together has a lot of writing, as does the On Your Own. So I'm going to flip over and look at this here. So with the On Your Own, which is on the back side here on page 60 in the workbook, still in page 97 in the textbook, it says forms are given in the working papers. Work this problem independently. Parker Ross owns a service business called Ross Hair Care, which uses these accounts that are all listed here. So you will once again need to prepare a chart of accounts. We're going to arrange expense accounts in alphabetical order, use a 3-digit account numbers, and numbers the account within divisions of 10. So to save time here, I have added my accounts, or some of my titles here. So I have Ross Hair Care, my chart of accounts, my balance sheet account heading, and then my income statement accounts headings. Then we'll list assets, liabilities, and owner's equity, and then revenue and expenses. So what I would recommend doing is pausing this video and filling those in. And then you can play it because I'm going to pause mine as well, write in the rest of the accounts, and then go over it. So let's just go over this here. Assets, we have 110, which is cash, 120 accounts receivable T. Ryan, 130 accounts receivable G. Sealer, 140 is supplies, 150 is prepaid insurance. Liabilities, those are our accounts payable. 210 is accounts payable Eli Company. 220 is accounts payable Pine Supplies. 300 is our owner's equity. 310 is Parker Ross Capital. 320 is Parker Ross Drawing. Over to our income statement accounts, 400 is revenue. 410 is sales. 500 is going to be for our expenses. 510 is delivery expense. 520 is insurance expense. 530 is supplies expense. And 540 is telephone expense. Listed in that order there. Now, our new accounts that are added in step 2 is going to be for rent expense and for water expense. So let's look at rent expense, where that would go. R is before S, so it needs to go between insurance and supplies expense. So between 520 and 530, that's going to be 525 for rent expense. And you can make whatever type of accounts you need for your business. And the next one is for water expense. Water will be at the end of the alphabet, so that will be 550. Our last thing we need to do is we need to open the account for delivery expense in step 3 down here. So delivery expense, we gave the number 510 to. So we first need to write the account title, delivery expense. And the account number is 510. And that's all we have to do to open the account down in our working papers here, which this would be our general ledger, which we will start posting from into tomorrow. So here we have our chart of accounts listed in this order. Some of it is just things you will have to memorize, like such the order that the assets go into. The other things are more alphabetical order, such as expenses are alphabetical order. Your accounts receivable and accounts payable, I list those alphabetically as well. And then for owner's equity, capital goes first, and then drawing. Capital account was the money that the owner has invested in the business. It's something that we will use a lot more than the drawing account.